Rome's foundation myth. Although Greek historians did not write seriously about Rome until the Pyrrhic War, they were aware of Rome's existence long before then. In accordance with their custom of explaining the origin of the foreign peoples they encountered by connecting them with the wanderings of one of their own mythical heroes, such as Jason and the Argonauts, Heracles, or Odysseus, Greek writers from the 5th century BC onward invented at least 25 different myths to account for Rome's foundation. In one of the earliest accounts, Hellanicus of Lesbos, which became accepted, the Trojan hero Aeneas and some followers escaped the Greek destruction of Troy, and after wandering about the Mediterranean for some years, they settled in central Italy, where they intermarried with the native population and became the Latins. Although the connection between Rome and Troy is unhistorical, the Romans of later time were so flattered by this illustrious mythical pedigree that they readily accepted it and incorporated it into their own folklore about the beginning of their city. Roman historians knew that the Republic had begun about 500 BC, because their annual list of magistrates went back that far. Before that time, they thought, Rome had been ruled by 7 kings in succession. By using Greek methods of genealogical reckoning, they estimated that 7 kings would have ruled about 250 years, thus making Rome's regal period begin in the middle of the 8th century BC. Ancient historians initially differed concerning the precise date of Rome's foundation, ranging from as early as 814 BC, Timaeus, to as late as 728 BC, Cincius Alimentus. By the end of the Republic, it was generally accepted that Rome had been founded in 753 BC, and that the Republic had begun in 509 BC. Since the generally accepted date of Troy's destruction was 1184 BC, Roman historians maintained Troy's unhistorical connection with Rome by inventing a series of fictitious kings, who were supposed to have descended from the Trojan Aeneas and ruled the Latin town of Alba Longa for the intervening 431 years, 1184 to 753 BC, until the last of the royal line, the twin brothers Romulus and Remus, founded their own city, Rome, on the Palatine Hill. According to tradition, the twins, believed to have been the children of the god Mars, were set adrift in a basket on the Tiber by the king of Alba. They survived, however, being nursed by a she-wolf, and lived to overthrow the wicked king. In the course of founding Rome, the brothers quarreled, and Romulus slew Remus. This story was a Roman adaptation of a widespread ancient Mediterranean folktale told of many national leaders, such as the Akkadian king Sargon, circa 2300 BC, the biblical Moses, the Persian king Cyrus the Great, the Theban king Oedipus, and the twins Neleus and Peleus of Greek mythology. The regal period, 753 to 509 BC, Romulus, Rome's first king according to tradition, was the invention of later ancient historians. His name, which is not even proper Latin, was designed to explain the origin of Rome's name. His fictitious reign was filled with deeds expected of an ancient city founder and the son of a war god. Thus he was described as having established Rome's early political, military, and social institutions, and as having waged war against neighboring states. Romulus was also thought to have shared his royal power for a time with a Sabine named Titus Tatius. The name may be that of an authentic ruler of early Rome, perhaps Rome's first real king. Nothing, however, was known about him in later centuries, and his reign was therefore lumped together with that of Romulus. The names of the other 6 kings are authentic and were remembered by the Romans, but few reliable details were known about their reigns. However, since the later Romans wished to have explanations for their early customs and institutions, historians ascribed various innovations to these kings, often in stereotypical and erroneous ways. The 3 kings after Romulus are still hardly more than names, but the recorded deeds of the last 3 kings are more historical and can, to some extent, be checked by archaeological evidence. According to ancient tradition, the warlike founder Romulus was succeeded by the Sabine Numa Pompilius, whose reign was characterized by complete tranquility and peace. Numa was supposed to have created virtually all of Rome's religious institutions and practices. The tradition of his religiosity probably derives from the erroneous connection, by the ancients of his name, with the Latin word numen, meaning divine power. Numa was succeeded by Tullus Hostilius, whose reign was filled with warlike exploits, probably because the name Hostilius was later interpreted to suggest hostility and belligerence. Tullus was followed by Ancus Marcius, who was believed to have been the grandson of Numa. His reign combined the characteristics of those of his two predecessors, namely religious innovations as well as warfare. Archaeological evidence for early Rome is scattered and limited, because it has proven difficult to conduct extensive excavations at sites still occupied by later buildings. What evidence exists is often ambiguous, and cannot be correlated easily to the ancient literary tradition. It can, however, sometimes confirm or contradict aspects of the ancient historical account. For example, it confirms that the earliest settlement was a simple village of thatched huts on the Palatine Hill, one of the 7 hills eventually occupied by the city of Rome, but it dates the beginning of the village to the 10th or 9th century BC, not the mid-8th century. Rome therefore cannot have been ruled by a succession of only 7 kings down to the end of the 6th century BC. Archaeology also shows that the Esquiline Hill was next inhabited, thus disproving the ancient account, which maintained that the Quirinal Hill was settled after the Palatine. Around 670 to 660 BC, the Palatine settlement expanded down into the valley of the later Forum Romanum, and became a town of artisans living in houses with stone foundations. The material culture testifies to the existence of some trade, as well as to Etruscan and Greek influence. Archaeology of other Latin sites suggests that Rome at this time was a typical Latin community. In another major transition spanning the 6th century, the Latin town was gradually transformed into a real city. The swampy Forum Valley was drained and paved to become the city's public center. There are clear signs of major temple construction. Pottery and architectural remains indicate vigorous trade with the Greeks and Etruscans, as well as local work done under their influence. Rome's urban transformation was carried out by its last 3 kings: Lucius Tarquinius Priscus, Tarquin the Elder, Servius Tullius, and Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, Tarquin the Proud. According to ancient tradition, the 2 Tarquins were father and son and came from Etruria. One tradition made Servius Tullius a Latin, another described him as an Etruscan named Mastana. All 3 kings were supposed to have been great city planners and organizers, a tradition that has been confirmed by archaeology. Their Etruscan origin is rendered plausible by Rome's proximity to Etruria, Rome's growing geographic significance, and the public works that were carried out by the kings themselves. The latter were characteristic of contemporary Etruscan cities. It would thus appear that during the 6th century BC some Etruscan adventurers took over the site of Rome and transformed it into a city along Etruscan lines.